And good morning. It's WKRK Radio in Murphy, North Carolina, cable TV channel 25, and worldwide at country.am. About every Monday, about the same time, we have Cherokee County Sheriff's Office with us in some capacity, and usually it's Sheriff Derek Palmer, unless he decides that Donna Lynn's here and he didn't want to show up and be on her show.
Well, I figured since she was gone for a month, I'd come back and talk to you a day or two.
She told me to pick on you.
Right.
She's good at that, you know.
She is. She's very good at that.
How's the sheriff today?
Doing well. Everything's going well today.
Very good. Had an exciting, busy week.
Yeah, it has been a good week. We just same old stuff that we deal with every week, but, sometimes it's busy, sometimes it's not. Last week was a pretty good week, and we finished the week up by having our awards banquet Saturday night, and that was real good. It's the first time we've ever tried this, first time we've ever done it, and it turned out really well.
So giving awards to folks in the sheriff's office?
Yeah, we wanted to take a night. Myself and the chief deputy talked about this several months ago, and we wanted to take a night and just appreciate the people who do all the hard work at the sheriff's office, and with our 911 center and our detention center and the deputies that work, administrative staff, all the people that keeps the ball rolling, per se, there at the sheriff's office. A lot of people, when you think about the sheriff's office, you just think about the uniform patrol division. You think about the cars and the guys wearing the uniform. But there's much, much more to it than that. And I said in the banquet last Saturday night, and it's the truth, people ask me all the time, they say, what's the difference between working as a deputy for the last 20 years at the sheriff's office and now being the sheriff? Mm-hmm. And my response is, it's kind of like going on that long trip and a bunch of people, 100 people getting on a Greyhound bus to go on a trip. Mm-hmm. It's different when you're sitting on the bus and you're going on the trip, and then when you crawl in the driver's seat. It's two completely different experiences. So that's the best way I can equate it. And these people that work at the sheriff's office, these employees that we have there, they're the people that helps me keep the bus in the road and keep the gas in it and fix the flat tires and do all the maintenance on it and all those kind of things, so that we don't get stranded somewhere or someone gets hurt. And when emergencies run up, we have the people there to take care of it. So, there's a lot more to it than just the sheriff running the show. There's a lot of people that's under me that does a lot of different things that are very, very important.
One of my questions actually today was to talk about some of the folks and departments of the sheriff's office that a lot of people may not realize exist. How many different divisions are there in the sheriff's office?
Well, we have our basic breakdown of the sheriff's office is we have the administrative division, we have the criminal investigative division, we have the volunteer programs along with the victims advocacy unit, we have the detention center. Criminal investigations is broke down between the criminal investigations towards breaking and enterings and all those kind of things, and drugs, so that's broke down two different sections there. But even within those things, it's broke down even further because we have to do all kind of things like the sex offender registry, the pistol purchase permits, concealed weapons permits. They're just pawn shops, jewelry shops, all the permits for all those things and monitoring those. We have social media things that we have to do as far as monitoring stolen property on social media, so we have people dedicated to that. There's just a ton of things. I could sit here and tell you everything I can think of, and I'm sure I'm missing more things. But then you have the 911 operations. You have all those things going on down there with all the emergency calls coming in the county and responding to those calls. And I have just a little bit of numbers here that I do want to talk about. 1 second is that dispatch, for example. I pulled the numbers before this banquet and looked at it, and from January 1st through December 31st of last year, our dispatch center received 14,225 911 calls. There were 49,117 administrative line incoming calls to the detention center, and the detention center employees placed 18,487 outgoing administrative calls relating to emergency traffic in the county. So that's a total of 81,829 calls in some form that our dispatchers handled last year. And you're looking at 10 people doing that, 81,000 calls. And so a lot of people don't realize the amount of things that come into the 911 center and what they do down there. And I was kind of jokingly, but it's true. When I started out as a deputy, but when I started out, you kind of did everything in the sheriff's office. So you may come in one night and they say, we need you to dispatch. Or you might come in, they say, we want you to jail, or take a commitment or different things. So when I started, you were a lot of these different tasks you were doing. So I spent time dispatching and spent time at the console, taking 911 calls and placing those. However, if you put me in a dispatch center today, there's no way that someone can just go sit down there and dispatch. It's a very complicated job. There are, like I say, 81,000 calls a year coming in. I jokingly tell them when I go down there, it looks like NASA because they got all these computer screens up in front of them, and each person, I don't know how many screens, they got probably 5 or 6 screens for each person, with all the mapping and all the information that comes in with, and everything's touch screen electronic now. Where you dispatch the stuff out, and they've got to know the different departments, fire departments to dispatch for what areas and protocols, and they do the emergency medical directives where they basically do the emergency medical dispatch where they give instructions over the phone for CPR and other emergencies. So there's just tons of things they do down there. And I call them the unsung heroes of the sheriff's office because they really are, not just the sheriff's office, but the unsung heroes of the county. Because not only do they do the sheriff's office, but they do Andrews Police, Murphy Police, EMS, fire, and a host of other things.
Now, dispatching is a lot different than just talking on the radio.
Oh, it is.
What kind of special training is required to be a dispatcher?
Well, when I was checking into this and we're hiring new dispatchers and putting them to work, one of my first questions was, how long does it take from the time you hire a dispatcher, first day of work, to the time you can put them on the console and they're comfortable with everything and they really don't need supervision? How long does it take to get from point A to point B on that? And typical response is anywhere from a year to 18 months. That's what it takes to train a dispatcher. And so when you think about this and you think about just talking on the radio, like I said before, there's lots of other things they do with that. As dispatching these different people, they've got to orchestrate things. And so not only do they talk on the radio to get people where they need to be, but they have to be the kind of the brain behind it to get the right people to the right places, to know who needs to respond, how they need to respond. They have to make calls all the time, like in law enforcement, for example, how many officers need to respond to something, how quickly they need to respond to something, and they're relaying this information back and forth. So literally they hold people's lives in their hands when they do this. So it's much more than just talking on the radio.
I've gained a new appreciation for dispatchers because just hearing some of the stories, I remember a couple of years ago, someone had posted on my Facebook wanting to thank a particular dispatcher who walked in and said if it weren't for that dispatcher, her husband would not be alive.
Right.
So, and I've heard several stories thanking dispatchers. Another dispatcher was touched by a family who lost their home in fire, and she took it upon herself to help provide clothing and gather some kind of drive to help this family get back on their feet. And, a lot of times we think that we're just talking to somebody on the phone, but we're actually talking to people that are there saving lives and helping our community.
And not just that, but people who have feelings and people who care on the other end of that line. One thing about the dispatchers that a lot of people tend to forget is sometimes, not very often, but it happens from time to time in our area, you have dispatchers who are trying to do the best they can, get the appropriate people to the right places. And while they're on the phone with somebody, they have to counsel someone as they're taking their last breaths. They could die on the other end of that line. Not only that, but mental patients, suicidal patients, where they may hear a person take their own life on the other end of the line when they're trying to do the best they can. And sometimes, we do all these stress debriefings and all these things for officers and fire and EMS, when they go through times of crisis. And sometimes we forget that our dispatchers also need those things because they're very emotionally attached when these things happen. I know that in times past when we've had things happen where we've had an officer be involved in an accident or in a shooting or different things on the other end of that line, the dispatchers are very emotional, are very attached to those situations. So, we always need to remember that it's not just a robot on the other end of that phone, but it's also a real-life human being with feelings and emotions.
I've often wondered, because I've seen this happen in news, like large city newsrooms that cover the news people at some point get a little desensitized because they're exposed to so much tragedy.
Right.
I would imagine that happening at some level at dispatch because all the emergency situations come in there.
And it does, and it happens on all level of emergency workers, whether it's fire, EMS, law enforcement. You know, and a lot of people in the general public don't understand this and don't. It's funny because I was thinking about this even this morning when I was up getting ready. You know, sometimes when you have tragic events and tragic things that happen, sometimes the community, they misunderstand what they see. Mm-hmm. And they see officers, they see EMS workers, firefighters, sometimes on a tragic scene laughing. Mm-hmm. They see them sometimes on a scene telling a joke or something like that. And a lot of people get very upset when they see that happening. But what the general public doesn't understand sometimes is when you see this over and over and over and over again, it's not that you don't care. It's that you have to find some way to cope with it. Mm-hmm. You have to find some way of mentally coping with the tragedy mm-hmm. that you're seeing from day in to day out. And so even though you may see law enforcement officers or EMS or fire, even sometimes dispatchers, telling a joke or laughing or something while there's a tragedy going on, it's not that they don't care. It's that they're trying to cope with the tragedy that they're experiencing. Mm-hmm. And people do that in all kind of different ways. And I've seen this a lot when delivering death messages to people. When you deliver death messages and people have a death out of the blue, they react all kind of different ways. Some scream and yell, some cry, some laugh, some ignore, some just pretend it don't happen. And so we all have different ways of coping. So, you know, when you see that going on out there, and there are some things sometimes that's inappropriate that needs to be dealt with. Mm-hmm. But when you see things out there, it's a wreck or something, and you see firemen standing on the side of the road smiling and laughing, don't just necessarily think that they don't care what's happening. They may just be needing to cope with that situation.
Right. I could easily imagine just events like that consuming someone if they allow it to consume.
It can. And a lot of times when you go through these tragic situations, and you know, you hear this a lot from the military and law enforcement especially, and even fire and EMS, you heard a lot through them too, is, you know, you replay the events over and over in your mind when you lay down to go to bed at night, and you can't even get away from it when you get home. And so when you have tragedy, you have car wrecks, you have shootings, you have these different things that happen, and you're seeing people there in these tragic events. When you go home, it's not easy just to lay down and go to sleep. You have to learn how to decompress, and you have to learn how to cope with those things. And sometimes it is through desensitizing. It's through removing yourself from the situation.
I always, growing up with my mom and dad, we went to a lot of funerals, and some have been just really, really sad and mournful, and then
right.
others, the ones that I've really appreciated were the ones where the people were laughing, talking about the person who had died, and just recreating some of the funny
right.
things that person, and really celebrated the life of the person who has passed on, because I think that's usually what the person would want, is to remember the good things about that
right.
person and realize the joy and laughter that person brought to their loved ones.
Yeah, I think so. And like I say, sometimes it's when you're standing on the outside looking in, sometimes those things are hard to comprehend sometimes. Sometimes it's misunderstood.
Yeah, I didn't get that at first when I saw people laughing at a funeral. I thought that was so disrespectful. But
right.
then I finally realized
right.
that it is a great way to just celebrate what that person has done.
It is. But we have a lot of things, you know, not just the 911 center, but a lot of things that goes on the sheriff's office. And even through administration, for example, talking about the people the ladies that's in the front office. You know, we've got Dawn that generally sits up front that takes care of the people coming in, and she deals with all the incoming phone calls for the most part. And I mean, all the ladies sharing these responsibilities, but her job primarily dealing with all these phone calls, dealing with reports, of getting reports out to the public who request them, or for the media, and things like that. She takes the initial application process for weapons, purchase permits, conceal permits. But with these ladies there's all kind of things they do in addition to that, as far as records retention, and like I say, through that concealed weapon process and through that purchase permit process, sometimes they could take days or weeks per process to get done, so they all pitch in and try to get it done. We've got the Victims Advocacy Unit who deals with domestic violence situations and victims in general, where they help them get through their tragedy and through their situations, and maybe go to court and sit with them and different things that they do. Then there's a volunteer program that comes along with that they kind of oversee and help with that program. Of course, like I said before, we do our precious metal permits, pawn tickets, pawn shop permits. then maintaining those permits and renewal permits and all those things that come along with that. But not just that, but to monitor the things that's coming into those shops. So when you're talking about pawn shops and precious metals and scrap yards and all those kind of things, it's more than just issuing that permit. We have to monitor those places because that's where a lot of stolen property goes through.
Right.
So we have to. A lot of these ladies monitor those things and the things coming through those scrap yards. Like talk about social media is the same way. We have to monitor the best we can. We can't spend a lot of time on it, but we have to monitor the best we can these yard sale sites and different things that's on social media because we recover a lot of jewelry and stolen property and stuff through these yard sale sites. So, not only that, but the fingerprinting that comes through with that, people need printed for different reasons. It could be the purchase permits, concealed. It could be job applications, different things that come through the sheriff's office. So they do all the fingerprinting. They maintain the custody records of evidence and storage and retention of evidence. Also help with the quartermaster property inventory, where that issued property to officers and all those different kind of things that's out there. So, and we could go on and on and on about what the administrative staff does, but when you look down there and you see that we have 5 or 6 administrative people, it's easy to think, well, that's too many. You need way less than that. But when you stop and think what they actually do and the processes they do, we could actually use a couple more, to be honest with you, because of all the things that they have to do there. So not only 911 center administrative staff, but like you say, we have those different divisions and different things that we do there through the sheriff's office. Detention center, for example, in 2015, they booked almost 2,000 prisoners through in 2015. And so when you look at this, not only just booking them through the jail, but also making sure they're safe within the jail, make sure they're fed, make sure they get medical care, make sure they take care of the needs they have while they're in the jail. That's a huge undertaking. That's a huge task, just the detention center in itself. And so, we just want to take a little bit of time to thank these people for all this hard work they did in this past year, and they're going to do in years to come. And trust me, people don't get in law enforcement. They don't work at the detention center. They're not a 911 dispatcher, and they're sure not administrative staff because they want to get rich and make a lot of money. Right. They do it because they care about the people.
And I keep hearing all these horrible stories from around the country, and some of them are a little too close to home, wherever it happens. For example, 2 hours ago, Channel 9 posted a picture and a story about new details in, I think it was Ohio. A woman calls police claiming her ex-boyfriend has weapons and is looking to kill an officer. So he had a motive there. 20 minutes later, deputies discovered Danville police officer Thomas Cottrell on the ground, and he was dead. So when you hear stories about things like this, does this make you question your choice in career?
Yeah, sometimes it does. I mean, but the thing about it is when you do this, the same things happen to me over the years when I worked the drug task force and deputy and also as sheriff. It's happened to me since I've been sheriff this past year. But not just myself, but the people we work for. There's threats come in, and people, tell us that so-and-so's planning this or so-and-so's going to do that. You need to be careful. And so, that's just part of life that we deal with in law enforcement. But my response to that is that I by no means want to die. I want to live a long life, and I want to be here for my children and grandchildren, hopefully, before too long. And I'd love to experience that and die in ripe old age of 182. I'd really love that to happen. And probably not, but but I'd love for that. 182. That's my goal.
I look forward to reading that on the birthday calendar one of these days.
There you go. But that's my goal. But the fact of the matter is we're all going to die. Mm-hmm. We're all going to die at some point in time in life. And my philosophy on this is I would rather die doing the right thing and giving myself for those that are around me and doing what I can to help my community and help those people that are around me. Today's Martin Luther King, we're celebrating Martin Luther King's birthday, and there's a quote that I used Saturday night about this, and I want to read it again. It's a Martin Luther King quote. It said, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others?" And so when you think about that and you think about our job in life and what we are to do in life is to help others and is to be there for other people. And I actually had a person tell me not long ago that I needed to back off of this going after these drug dealers and slack off a little bit on this and not go after them as hard as we've been going after them. Because there were plans out there and there were people talking in the underworld community about killing me and about taking us out. And my response to that is I'd rather give my life doing the right thing and doing what needs to be done as to be cowardly and get on the side of evil. Right. And so, we just have to realize this is part of the job. This is part of the experience. This is what we're made for. We are where God put us, and He'll protect us, and He'll take care of us through this.
All right. Very good. All right. There was a Saturday morning chase. A gentleman was arrested for drugs and a stolen vehicle. Can you give us a little bit of information on how that went down?
Not really. I mean, just to be honest with you, this is part. I don't know how the call actually came in, how the officers found the vehicle to begin with. But everything the officers are doing out there and everything that we're seeing happening with these chases and with these arresting people on drugs and all these kind of things is part of an ongoing investigations that we are in the community with the drug activity and the drug things that's happening out there. One of the things that's happening is that we are getting a lot of, and I think last year, I wish I'd have brought my numbers with me, but last year I think we did somewhere in the neighborhood of about 4,000 extra patrols last year. And about 8,000 or so security checks for 2015. So what's happening is people are calling in and saying, hey, there's a strange vehicle in my neighborhood. I need some extra patrol here. Or we have a drug house over here and there's a lot of traffic coming in now. Could you look at this? One thing I do want to let people know is that, sometimes it's impossible to get to everything that's out there. And we have a lot of times 4 officers at a time at work, and plus our investigators. And so, it's hard to get to the entire county every night and every extra patrol and everything that happens. And so we try our best getting to all these different places. But what our officers are finding more and more is on these extra patrols, we actually put out a list for day shift and night shift. And then sometimes the extra patrol could be for both. But we put out so-and-so in this area, or not necessarily who requested, but in this area, it's been requested extra patrol reference drug activity. Or in this area, it's been reference extra patrol reference suspicious vehicle. Or in this area, extra patrol reference a lot of breaking and enterings. So what's happening is our officers are going out to these areas on these extra patrols when they're in between calls, and they're looking for specific things. And our public is doing a great job informing us of what's going on out there and what's happening. And the more they inform us and the more the public tells us what's happening, the more the officers know what to look for while they're out there. Okay. So that's why you're seeing a lot of these things happening, like these chases that's happening, a lot of drugs that's been, their patrol officers are bringing a lot of drug dealers to jail, a lot of drug users to jail, because when they're in these areas, it's more than just riding around and waiting for something to happen. Mm-hmm. They're actually actively out looking for things. They're out looking for these suspicious things and what the public is reporting. So it's really working well. We're making some great progress this year. And it's leading into other drug investigations, to some bigger things that's happening out there. And so we are well on our way to making some inroads and some headway to the drug activity.
When the deputy's out there working, he's working a 10-hour shift, is that right?
A
12-hour
shift, yeah.
All right. At the end of his shift, another deputy comes on to replace. Right. What kind of communication happens after one shift ends and another shift begins so that they're all on the same page?
Well, what happens is they have a briefing in between shifts. Mm-hmm. Not only do they have a briefing in between shifts, but we also have we have a scrolling board there at the sheriff's office that talks about different extra patrols, different things that happen. Right. But the sergeants get together, the sergeant coming off and the sergeant coming on actually gets together and has a conversation about things they're seeing in the shift before and the shift coming on. And so they pass that on down to the deputies that are working. And so they kind of have an idea of what happened previous to them coming on shift. And it's kind of like a roll call, that a lot of times you see on TV, and it happens in a lot of the bigger places where they have the actual roll call where they come in where the sergeant stands in front of the room and briefs everybody on things that's happening. It's kind of along those same principles and those same lines, except it's more of on a smaller scale. And we just kind of get that information passed back and forth. But with cell phones and email and all these different things we got, we can get the messages from shift to shift as to what's happening.
I was kind of curious if it was starting from scratch at each shift or if there was some kind of communication.
No,
so
we try to give communication back and forth of what's happening and what's going on out there. And the officers talk to each other also about things. So a lot of times they interact and they talk in between the shifts, even the patrol officers themselves. So, you know, they kind of pass that word of mouth along as to what they saw or what was going on the shift before. So if we got a Zone 2 officer that's working in the Murphy area coming off and a Zone 2 officer coming on, sometimes those two particular officers will talk to each other and say, okay, I dealt with this tonight, or this domestic, or this problem over in this area. Be prepared to go there. And this is what I told them, this is what I did, kind of thing. So they're kind of on the same page when the shifts change.
All right. Our time is 11:31. I see our time is pretty much almost going.
We didn't even get started.
Cover? I know, we haven't even got started. Anything you want to cover before we say goodbye?
No, that's fine. It's just to let the public know that we are out there. We are working. We are trying to make some inroads. And we're working on some things right now that are, you know, we're trying to – we've talked about all this time about cutting the head off the snake on the drugs and doing these things. We are working on some things right now that's getting bigger and bigger and bigger down the road. And I know a lot of times that's frustrating when people have that local drug dealer living next door and they're not doing anything about my problem. We're trying to work on those little problems too, but we're rolling some bigger and bigger and bigger stuff out. And so hopefully that when we take some of these bigger people off, that the filter down of these drugs is going to dry up for a while. So that's going to be our goal on this and try to get this done. And we're working on some things that, I mean, honestly, I met the district attorney last week, and there's a few things that we're working on that could potentially be national news level. So we're looking on these things, and hopefully it'll work out that way.
All right. For folks who want to know more about the chase and the drugs, I just posted the press release on our website and Facebook page right before we went on the air here, so you can read the details. And it looks like Roger sent 2 more press releases for me to publish when I get a chance that came in during our show. So 2 more. I keep on looking at my phone that vibrates during the show, and 2 of those were from your office press releases.
So good. I'm glad they're getting them out.
We'll be posting those shortly.
Okay.
All right, Sheriff.
Y'all
thank you very
great
much.
Day.
You do the same. It's WKRK Radio in Murphy, North Carolina, cable TV channel 25, and worldwide at country.am. Our time is 11:32. Temperature right now is 22 degrees.